everybody, something a little bit different today. I'm not going to do a tutorial. I just want to talk a little bit about the Soundcraft UI24R. I have two of them. I've got one here right now and one's way down there. I've got them cascaded together. I know there is a lot of talk about these devices in some forums about them being prone to failure, or they overheat, or clipping signal can drop out the audio, or sometimes they just disconnect, or sometimes they won't reboot. So I just want to talk about what I've been using them for and what my experiences have been. So this box right here, the one labeled host, this is the one I use at home every day as the interface for my computer. So this thing runs 24/7, and you'll notice I didn't clean it off, and I specifically didn't clean it off. You'll notice how dusty that is. So why is it dusty? I wanted to talk about the conditions that this lives in every single day when it's running 24/7, 365. I just recently did a home renovation in my basement, which is where this lives. And it sits in a rack with really poor ventilation. There's about 2 RU of space underneath this box. Everything else is above it, but there's no side ventilation to the rack. The rear of the rack has really poor renovation. And as I said, I just did a renovation in the basement. So instead of covering this up, which I was going to do, I actually left it open to the elements of the renovation. So it got drywall dust all over it. Got drywall dust inside. I'm sure there's some drywall dust that got in the connections on the side as well as inside the vents. I have had no issues with this device. Again, I use it every single day. It's never turned off when it's at home. Well, that's not true. There's the odd day or weekend where maybe I go away and I turn it off for the weekend. But essentially it runs all day for most of the year. So in poor ventilation, it's really dirty. I've had no dropouts with this. I've had no issues with it booting up on those rare occasions when I do turn it off. No audio dropouts, no restarting of the device, no requirement to restart the device to get it to work. So that's the condition this one lives in. The other one lives in the box pretty much all year until I have an event. So what's the event I'm doing right now? I'm doing some graduation ceremonies, and I am doing a total of 5 ceremonies this week over 4 days. So at the beginning of the week, I had a couple of nighttime events. Yesterday, I had 2 back-to-back, so it was all day. So these devices did not get turned off all day. They had signal going for pretty much 13 hours. And I have an afternoon event today. So that's what's happening. And we're gonna have a quick look at how these are talking to each other. I'll walk you through the whole thing. But basically what's going on in this one is I've got signal coming from the house audio system in here. So anything that's tied into the house audio that I didn't want to unpatch from house audio, but still needed to send down to some floor speakers, I've taken out of the house console into here, and then I am sending it out via cascade. So let's have a look at that. I'm sending it out over the cascade down to the other machine, to the remote machine. And then conversely, down at the other machine, I have some stage inputs, which I'm bringing into the remote box and then sending it cascade back up here. The fun thing about that is these boxes have only been tested by Soundcraft to 100 feet. That's the disclaimer they have on their website. That's all they said they've tested it to. I am using 200-foot cables, 2 200-foot cables, no network infrastructure in between. They are 2 direct point-to-point connections, and I have static IPs on these boxes. 200-foot cables. I'm actually running 147 feet of distance, and I have not had a single issue all week. I did this exact same event last year. I did not have a single issue last year. The only strange thing that's happened is that I've had a situation where I get a notice on the interface saying that a new device is detected, need to reboot the interface. Now, the reason I think that's happening is I do have the Wi-Fi turned on both so that I can use my iPad or my iPhone to connect real quick when I'm down on the floor. Now, in a situation like this, when they are cascaded together and point to point, no network gear in between, and the Wi-Fi on, what happens is it doesn't matter which device you're connecting to on Wi-Fi, all the Wi-Fi connection goes through the system and only connects to the host device. So this is 192.168.0.253, the other one is 0.254. I cannot connect to that one's interface with that IP address directly. No matter what I do, doesn't matter where I'm connected at which end, the connection comes through this host box. So the only thing that I can think is happening is, depending on which Wi-Fi point I'm actually connected to, depending on where I move inside that Wi-Fi spectrum, it's seeing that I'm actually jumping connections. And it's, I mean, at least this is what I think for my wireless devices, like my iPad. So because it's moving between the two access points, it's telling me it's detecting the opposite device of the one I initially loaded. So then it has to go through the whole rigmarole of reloading the interface. Now, I was a little concerned the first time that happened that I would get some interruption of signal, but I did it anyway because I needed to know and I wanted to be able to tell you no interruption of signal. Literally all it did was reload the interface. So again, that kind of makes sense when we're talking about an iPad or an iPhone. I've actually seen the message on here, and this is a direct HDMI connection to the box. So a little strange. I'm sure someone who's much more network savvy than me can probably point out why that's happening. I'm sure it probably still has something to do with the two Wi-Fi points being up. But I think the important part here is that it doesn't interrupt signal. If you ever have a situation in a setup like this, just know that reloading the interface will not interrupt your signal. So now that we've talked through sort of what's going on, I'm just going to walk you down the cable line. We'll do it quickly so you can see I am actually running point to point, and you'll know that, you know, I'm not trying to pull a fast one on you. This literally is running over the 100-foot mark that is specified by Soundcraft with zero issues. So let's have a look at that. Right, so here we are. We're looking from the other side of the window where we just were. You can see I've got these two Ethernet cables connected here. They are both 200 feet. They're coming out the window here, and they're heading along and down. So we'll just walk that route and then I'll speed it up for you. Quick little loop there just to have some strain relief. Just running underneath this cloth here, through these cable mats. See, there's nothing going on there, just a straight drop. Cable mats coming under here, no other network devices. There's one additional loop and there's the second additional loop, just the extra distance I didn't need, coming right in to the two opposite ends of those cables. So no network infrastructure in the middle, just point to point. So here's the remote box. You can see this one's really clean, no dust, because this one lives in a box, so it has not had the, shall we say, rough life that the other one has. There's my interface. So this is my receiving from the house mix. This is some instrumentation I have set up on the side of the stage here. And then this aux1 feed is going to some floor speakers that I have over there. And this additional aux out is going to a stage wedge I have right there. Let's just have a look at what's happening. So we're running to this box out of aux1. I'm coming main in, and then I am just looping back out to go to the other side of the stage here. Morning.
Good morning.
Good, how are you?
Woo!
Should I play Mom Dance for us right now? Okay, that's the one from Ben. From Ben.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the whole song. Instead of just looping the little bit that everybody else does.
yeah.
I'm going to suggest next year that everybody just use that. Yeah, I don't like to hold on to stuff because then people just expect it, but it's a much better version. Oh yes, in a second I will. So here's the other box that's just receiving the loop out from the first one. And here is the stage wedge, which is coming out on my second aux out. You can see we've got a DI here. This is for keyboards that get set up here, so electric pianos, and that's about it. So I know part of the conversation in the forums is that when you're driving these boxes really hard with a lot of instrumentation and things are clipping, it can reconnect, it can lose connection, or it can need to be rebooted. I have not had that experience. Obviously, in this situation, I'm not running a ton of channels, I'm not running a ton of instrumentation. It's a very simple back and forth. I have had the box running a lot of stuff all at once, and the next time I do, I'll do a video on that as well, just to show. But certainly under this condition, with cascading back and forth, and just having constant signal, at least yesterday for about 13 hours, there have been no issues with connection, no issues with signal dropout, other than that one little condition where it asked me to reload the interface. I have experienced nothing that people on the forums are talking about. Now, does this mean that people are using their boxes incorrectly? Does it mean they're overloading the system and clipping and maybe they don't understand gain structure? I can't comment on that. All I can say is that under the conditions that I've used these boxes in, I have not experienced any of the problems that anybody talks about. Does this mean that these boxes aren't prone to failure? Again, I can only talk about my own experience. I trust them. I like them for some really key reasons. One of them being I don't need a separate app to connect to these. I can just do it, right from the side of the box with an HDMI, a mouse, and a keyboard if I want to. But it's also an HTML interface. So any device that can open a web page can connect to this. It means there's never an issue with having an app that doesn't work, which I really like. Having that direct interface on the side is also really awesome for me because it lets me do a setup like this with as little extra setup as possible. Not everybody's going to like these boxes, and I'm certainly not here to sell you on them. I just wanted to comment on all the things that I've been reading in the forums, questions that I get asked pretty often, and just sort of tell you about my experiences, and you have to make up your own mind from there. I'm not a Soundcraft guy by any means. The house console upstairs in this venue is Soundcraft. It's not great. It's old. That's not why I don't like it. I just don't really like the workflow. Some stuff is counterintuitive to me. I spent the majority of my professional career using digital consoles, and when you get used to something, it's hard to break out and say other things are better than the thing you spent like 60 to 70 hours a week on for over a decade. So with that said, I'm not trying to sell you on Soundcraft. I just want you to hear how I've been using it and what my experiences have been. If you have questions, please throw them down in the comments. I'll do my absolute best to answer the best that I can, and make up your own mind with the information that I've given you and whatever you can read out there in other places. And with that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Cooking Easy Cookies. Bye.